I want to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. As someone who's focused on making content surrounding Deltarune, you may be surprised to see this kind of video, but I really am a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, and believe it or not, I have been since the very beginning. I've followed the series since its inception, so why haven't I been talking about it? And honestly, it's probably the same reason a lot of people have turned their backs on the series. For those who don't know, the 6th game, Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, was the ultimate conclusion to the game's story. We saw villains get their comeuppance, heroes go out in a literal blaze of glory, and the ghosts that haunted the Fazbear franchise finally put to rest. This was the ultimate ending. Or at least it seemed like it was. In 2019, we got Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, which began a brand new story in the Freddy's universe. And of course, 2021 gave us the infamous Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Despite still featuring familiar elements, the series took a turn, a sharp turn. New style, new gameplay elements, new characters, and yet Security Breach felt too attached to old ideas. The game was buggy on launch, had poorly designed gameplay, and was ultimately a really divisive entry in the franchise. Despite the fact that nowadays there are a lot of people who sing its praises, back then it was really hard to find a positive opinion, and even still it's seen as the most divisive entry in the franchise. Security Breach's failings were ultimately the reason I felt myself stop caring. I felt like Five Nights at Freddy's had gone downhill. Now wait, don't click off just yet. I'm not going to be giving you the same tired drivel about how it's too cartoonish or not scary enough. That's already been done to death, and I kinda disagree with that notion. I really don't mind the aesthetics of the newer series. Security Breach, while sure, it was definitely aimed at a younger audience in terms of art style, was actually a game I thought looked kinda nice. I also don't feel like going over why the gameplay has gone downhill because, yeah, the gameplay of Security Breach is terrible. However, that's only one game, and other games and experiences that have happened in the modern era have featured fantastic gameplay. Instead, I'd like to talk about the story. And no, it's not a random whiny rant about modern lore, or claiming, here's how to fix Security Breach, and it's just an insanely gory fanfiction. This video is focused on one specific topic. One particular mistake that the creators have made. One thing that, if changed, could maybe save the franchise. How do you fix Security Breach? So many have given their opinions, and it's usually make it good, or make it like the others, or make it super gory and disturbing. And while yes, making it good certainly would have fixed it, none of these are really helping explain what was wrong with Security Breach fundamentally. Any game can be gone over with a fine-toothed comb, taking every element that didn't work and saying, if they had changed this, they could have made it better. However, that answer doesn't help with understanding what's wrong at the core of a piece of media. This video began as a simple concept, figuring out what is or isn't at the core of Security Breach that makes it bad. However, as I began researching this video, I learned so much not only about Security Breach, but about the story of the series as a whole. This video got so much bigger. I no longer just want to answer why Security Breach is bad, but if the series is completely doomed like so many say, and if the story was even that good to begin with. Something surprised me. What started as a video aimed at negatively critiquing the modern story ultimately led to me discovering that the same thing that ruined Security Breach may save the franchise. So with all that being said, what is wrong with Security Breach? This is Save the Cat. It's a book on story structure and screenplays written by Blake Snyder. Its goal was to provide a simple structure detailing how to write good and compelling screenplays. The book contains a specific section titled the Save the Cat Beat Sheet. Here it gives explicit directions on where to put what and when in your story. It claims that by following the instructions in the book, your screenplay will be high quality and sellable. And to be honest, it's objectively correct. Kind of. This book receives lots of criticism online by writers, as too many people think it's an automatically make your screenplay good guide, or something that has to be followed by law without ever faltering, which simply isn't true. However, take a look at 90% of big Hollywood movies, and you'll notice they all seem to follow this guide. Not only that, but it seems that the same happens with video games and books as well. What's going on here? It's not that everyone in the world is reading this single book. Instead, it's that this book is simply pulling the curtains back to reveal a fundamental truth about storytelling that's been known for decades. This is another book written about story structure. Releasing in 1949, this book titled The Hero with a Thousand Faces also gives a simple explanation on how famous works of fiction create compelling stories using a simple structure. This structure is arguably what inspired Dan Harmon's Story Circle, a storytelling structure created by Dan Harmon, which also gives a simple structure to write your story and shape your hero. All three of these examples are very similar, and reveal a truth many budding writers don't want to hear. There is absolutely a right way and a wrong way to write a story. Sure, you can take liberties with so many elements, but at the heart of any piece of fiction lies structure. These three examples aren't set in stone, this is how to make a good story, of course not. They were created by analyzing some of the best media, and understanding how characters and plot were shaped. These structures shouldn't be followed because you feel like you have to, but instead because they're built to lead to well-paced character development and a satisfying story arc. They're not the guide to writing the best story, it's almost like you've got secret intel on what makes these great stories so great. Sure, you can divert from these structures, and many do. However, it's been said you can only break the rules once you understand them in the first place. Understand why things are structured the way they are, why characters go through specific arcs, there are arcs that go on in second-long scenes that you should understand. Only once you do that can you start to break some of these rules. My point is, it's not the most controversial statement in the world to suggest that a good story should have a good grasp of structure. My personal favorite is the Save the Cat version, because not only does it incorporate the hero's journey, but it also specifically tailors its structure towards visual media, with pacing that specifically lines up quite nice with games and movies. So as I refer to the story structure, understand that all of them are similar and there are so many more examples online. This is just the version that I think fits best. In my opinion, the worst game, the worst movie, whatever it is, can be saved with a solid plot. Without the story of Joel and Ellie, The Last of Us wouldn't be the critically acclaimed game we all know and love. Without the story, Portal 2 would have just been a pretty good puzzle game, not the massive hit it ended up being. Undertale, for all its good elements, is really lacking game-wise. Without the plot, Undertale would probably have been called a bad, boring experiment. Security Breach is no exception, except there wasn't a plot to save it. In my opinion, the biggest problem with Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is its total lack of any real plot, and its non-existent story structure. I know that the series has always relied on lore to hide details about the story. Sure, the lore is important to have, but any game the size of Security Breach needs a solid plot, especially when it has bare-bones gameplay, and no real deep mechanics. But hey, here I am claiming that there's no structure without even giving it a chance. Let's take a look at the Save the Cat beat sheet to try and figure out how Security Breach fits inside of it. The basic concept of most story structure theory involves breaking the story down into 3 acts. In the first act, we get our opening image, setup, theme stated, catalyst, and debate. The opening image and setup introduce us to our characters' worlds, their life, and what they want in life, as well as what they need in life. The theme stated simply states the theme of the main story, like in your buddy cop movie when the commissioner tells the hotshot police officer, "You can't work alone forever. Get over that accident and let someone into your life." This is the theme the movie is conveying. The catalyst is the event that changes your character's world. They learn they're a wizard, their Uncle Ben dies, etc. The debate is simply the main character either debating whether or not to go on the adventure ahead, or them preparing for it. Act 2 is the bulk of the story. Break into 2 is simply the beginning of Act 2, with fun and games making up most of the story. This is what the back of the box advertises, the main adventure. Maybe it's a quest running through the jungle, maybe it's running around New York stopping crime. Whatever it is, this is the fun and games, and it makes up the bulk of your story. The B story or B character is a side story or character separated from the main storyline that ties into the main theme of the movie. Maybe it's a love interest, maybe it's something else. The end of Act 2 is all tied together. Midpoint is when you've thought you've won, usually a false victory. Though it could be a false defeat, but that's not important for this video. Maybe you've stopped the crime boss, maybe you and your friend Mike Wazowski find a way to get Boo back to her room. Whatever it is, it won't last long. Bad guys close in and all is lost is when it's revealed you haven't won. Maybe it turns out your close friend is the real crime boss. Maybe it turns out the owner of Monsters Inc. is in on the conspiracy. Whatever that is, it leaves you completely defeated mentally. Dark Night of the Soul is simply hanging on that story beat for a bit, like when Mike and Sully, why do I keep using Monsters Inc., argue and get sad in the mountains after being banished. Act 3 has Break into 3, Finale, and Final Image. This is the final barrier, the final push, the final conflict. Your hero comes back, fights one final fight, and goes out triumphantly, while driving home the themes and entire message of the story. So, with all that taken into account, how does Security Breach fit this structure? Well, you could make a solid argument that it opens correctly. We get an opening image and a setup, though there's no theme stated anywhere. Gregory is a normal kid who's in a normal entertainment complex. Things are working as normal. The setup is meeting Freddy, trying to find a way out, and Gregory receiving the tech from Freddy like the Fazwatch. You could even argue that the catalyst is when the animatronics chase after us, which is abnormal behavior, and the Pizzaplex shuts its doors, locking Gregory in an Act 2 world that is unfamiliar, one he has to learn to conquer. However, here is where I think the game completely loses any aspect of a strong plot. This is Security Breach's Act 2. Gregory battles against the daycare attendant. Gregory moves through either a Mexican restaurant or an underground storage area. Gregory survives against animatronics in an office room. Gregory is kidnapped by Vanny. Gregory escapes Vanny. Gregory finds Freddy is damaged. Gregory again hides from animatronics. Gregory takes Freddy underground. Freddy is taken by the daycare attendant. Gregory avoids endoskeletons to find Freddy again damaged in the parts and service room. Gregory fixes Freddy. Gregory goes around the Pizzaplex gathering tools. Gregory takes down either Monty or Chica. Gregory repairs Freddy. Gregory needs to repair a robot. Gregory avoids DJ Music Man. Gregory destroys Roxy. Gregory yet again upgrades Freddy. Gregory chooses to stay in the Pizzaplex Relief for no reason in particular. This is where the multiple endings come in. Gregory either goes on one of multiple routes, none of which make for anything satisfying. Some include destroying the Pizzaplex, some include escaping the Pizzaplex, some include saving Vanessa from William's control, and one includes beating the revived Burn Trap and destroying the Pizzaplex. None really tie up loose ends or make for satisfying Act 3s. None of them answer any questions previously asked in the plot. None deliver any story beat usually featured in late Act 2 or Act 3. Now, you may aim to argue that all that droning on I did is the fun and games. And yeah, technically, most of the events do count as fun and games. The daycare attendant running through the endoskeleton, that does count in the fun and games section. If you hired me to write the story structure and force the security breach to fit on a Save the Cat beat sheet, that is where I'd put that. However, as I said before, this is where it gets difficult, because following the formula isn't enough to create a good story. Prying open Security Breach, you start to notice that this properly laid out structure is missing so much. First off, the setup is lacking. There's no real build-up for Gregory, or Glamrock Freddy, or even Vanny. Sure, characters definitely are introduced, but none are given any hard values, beliefs, or goals besides Gregory, whose goal is escape. We're not given an explicit reason to root for any of these characters. We're not told their wants or needs. I don't think that keeping characters mysterious is the worst thing in the world, but no character is allowed to really resonate with us because all of them are kept in shadows. Gregory might be evil, might be a robot, might be this, might be that. He's Patient 42, whatever it is. Glamrock Freddy is, in my opinion, enough, because his fun personality is enough for anybody to just root for him. However, the lack of any real strong character setup, I think, is a lack of a structural pillar that will ultimately cause this whole tower to fall. There are so many moments in the beginning of Security Breach where it feels like the game has something to say, but can't figure out how and ultimately falls flat. To illustrate what I mean, look at this scene. Gregory and Freddy are hiding from Vanny, and Freddy says there is no rabbit at the Pizzaplex. Not anymore. This ends up leading into a side story involving the decommission of Glamrock Bonnie, who is implied to have been very close to Freddy. This is literally the perfect B story. It's started at the exact moment a B story should be. If Gregory's attempts to escape the Pizzaplex and eventually fight against Vanny is the main arc of the game, then Bonnie's story could have been the secondary story, the side B that ties Freddy directly into the main story. It's quite literally introduced in the exact time the B story should be. We've broken into Act 2, we've started the fun and games. This would have been great. But ultimately, it just stops. We get one or two more hints later on at what happened, but it's never really elaborated in a way that allows it to become a full story arc. As I said before, the bulk of the game falls into the fun and games section. However, I also claim that the game just keeps spinning its wheels. So how can most media deliver an enjoyable Act 2 without getting stale? And it's pretty simple. Rising action and stakes. As stories continue, the stakes rise, as well as the action. A Spider-Man movie may start Act 2 with Spider-Man saving a woman's cat and stopping some low-level goons, but the stakes and intensity ramp up, and by Act 3, Spider-Man is fighting top-level threats. Even a movie like The Hangover understands this. What starts as a group of hungover guys looking for their friend ends up with them attempting to save a kidnapped person, and to keep the stakes high once that specific story is over, they're constantly running out of time to get to the big wedding. Security Breach never raises the stakes throughout the entire story. At every major story beat, the stakes are exactly the same. We may get caught and we may die. We don't come to learn any large-scale truths about the Pizzaplex, about Vanny, about Gregory, nothing that makes the tension and stakes rise. Sure, there are definitely implications here and there, and all the lore heads are getting probably mad at me right now. We do find out that Burn Trap is at the heart of the Pizzaplex and is super evil, so it's probably good we dealt with him. However, we don't find this out until the very end. Throwing in simple stakes could have really fixed this. Maybe after we start investigating and run into Vanny, Vanessa decides to factory reset Freddy, because he knows too much, and install a new AI brain, meaning the Freddy we know and love will die. Maybe she puts out a hit across the entire Pizzaplex, announcing that the Freddy Fazbear model is defective, and to destroy immediately. Now we have to keep Freddy out of harm's way. We at least have a raised stakes and a reason to continue, and look out for the cause of Freddy's glitching. Or maybe Freddy's comment about Gregory being broken is actually because Gregory is slowly being corrupted the same way Vanny is. That way the running away from the Pizzaplex option is bad for an understandable reason, and fighting against Vanny and Glitch Trap makes sense narratively. Obviously that would require altering lore, which is something I don't really want to do, however it's still worth mentioning. Things in Security Breach feel disjointed, like they're remnants from a much bigger game and a much bigger story, and I don't actually think that's true. No, instead I think it's just the lack of structure that caused this. Scenes in a movie aren't just let loose, hanging free, out there where you can move them around wherever you want. Within the larger arc of the story, small scenes have their own arcs. In another book that is controversial within the writing community, Story by Robert McKee argues that each scene should have a character's values shift from positive to negative, or negative to positive. He argues that a scene should be constantly playing with those values. For example, instead of a woman goes to the mall to buy shoes and gets them at the store, McKee argues a more effective approach would be a woman goes out to the store to buy shoes, and when she gets there she realizes everything is on sale. This is a positive shift. As she approaches the shoe rack, however, she finds out that her shoes are missing. Her shoes are out of stock. Now we're at a negative shift. Feeling defeated, she turns to leave the store, but finds a pair of even nicer shoes worth way more than the ones she wanted at an even bigger sale. This is the find of a lifetime. She purchases the shoes and leaves happy in one last positive shift. This scene is far more interesting through the use of positive and negative shifts. Now, I am in no way arguing that this is a rule you must follow, or even that it's worth thinking about 50% of the time. This rule isn't magic. What makes it worth bringing up is how it affects the story. It's far more interesting to read the story in which the woman faces progressive complications, which makes it more easy for the reader to play, or player in this case, to get through. One scene I cannot stand in Security Breach is when Gregory escapes Vanny, but gets a call from Freddy to meet him in Roxy Raceway. When we get there, he's randomly broken and dirty. It goes unexplained as to why he looks like this. He tells us to help him get to parts and service. A long segment follows, ending with us in an office segment. Who saves us right at the end but Freddy? Who's good enough to walk a little now? Sure, in real life, someone who's hurt could probably recover after a little time off their feet, but this is a fictional story, one in which it's important for everything to happen for a reason. This scene feels like it could have been done so much better. Say, for example, when this scene begins and we wake up in Vanny's room, maybe Freddy shows up outside the room and opens the vents for us instead of needing the screwdriver. We exit the vent. Hooray, we're saved! But Vanny is right behind us. Freddy tells us quick get in, and we do, but Vanny doesn't stop chasing Freddy. We run towards the open elevator door, but Vanny presses the remote control, and the doors start to close. Freddy holds out his hands and holds open the doors, grunting in pain as they're very heavy. He barely squeezes in the elevator and tells Gregory, "Quick, Gregory, there'll be security bots waiting for you. When we arrive at the atrium, run for Roxy Raceway. I'll hold them off and meet you there." Gregory says, "But Freddy, you're almost out of charge. It's about to be 2 a.m. Freddy, clearly running out of steam, says, "It's okay, Gregory. I will meet you in Roxy Raceway." The doors open and we run to Roxy Raceway, security bots chasing us. The giant garage-style door begins to shut. Vanny must be controlling it. As we run, Freddy gets under it and holds it up, though it starts to crush him in the process. We run through the open area, making it to safety. The door closes behind us. The security bots catch up to Freddy and we hear large metallic clanking sounds. We escape to the area where we'd normally meet him, and the same cutscene can play out. The security bots try to dismantle him and he's almost out of energy, so now it makes perfect sense for him to be damaged and tired. This adds so much more weight to the scene, tying it into the main story and adding a logical foundation throughout the whole story that feels so much less like a conglomeration of random events. Not only that, but now Freddy has made the active choice to protect Gregory at the expense of his own safety, which grounds him more as a character and makes him the whole thing more enjoyable as a player. I think overall, though, the biggest problem with Security Breach's lack of plot is the lack of a real theme. This rubs people the wrong way. You're telling me my story has to have a moral, a theme? What is this, a kid's story? And no, not at all. To summarize what could be a 20-minute video, all good media has a theme it explores. Whether it's as simple as Elf exploring the theme of being yourself and spreading joy, or something like The Last of Us exploring what it means to be a parent, family, connection, and survival. While lacking a strong main theme won't instantly kill your story, adding it onto the laundry list of problems Security Breach has really hurts it. There are so many options for a main theme that don't necessarily have to tie into or reveal the game's hidden lore. When I started the game and saw cardboard cutouts of literal killer robots who, in-universe, killed actual people, and a museum dedicated to the real victims of horrific tragedies, I thought that Security Breach was going to be about the selling and profiting off of grief. I thought it made perfect sense. Unfortunately, I was thinking a little bit too big. The story didn't really go anywhere. Sure, you may argue that the deeper lore hides a larger theme, but that doesn't excuse Security Breach's lack of focused plot for people who play the game normally. So, to summarize, Security Breach lacked a solid theme, had no build-up of tension or stakes, put scenes in places without the necessary build-up or structure, and overall just had a complete misunderstanding of plot structure overall. Makes sense. So, how would I fix it? And to be honest with you, there are tons of ways to do it. The original plan for this video was to spend the next 20 minutes giving my own overview of what I'd do for Security Breach. However, I realized when writing it, there are so many different routes depending on what you want to do, and you don't even have to completely change the entire story from the ground up. One thing that I've seen is that a lot of people writing their own versions of Security Breach, or how I'd fix it, often don't take into account how difficult it actually is to make the game. Giant, large-scale scenes featuring character interactions and tons of different animations might seem like a simple thing if they're just having a conversation, but it can spiral into a multiple-month-long project that just completely weighs down the game. But even taking into account what we have, just adding enough voice lines can completely change around the story, I think. It doesn't take that much. Like I said before, tie set pieces and plot points together. Don't have characters randomly break or need repairing, have it be affected directly by something that happens in the story. Instead of randomly guiding us towards parts and service to repair Freddy, line the chain of events up with some solid underlining plot. Freddy actively chooses to save Gregory, bypassing his hourly charge, which renders him weak and damaged. Rather than just going to parts and service because that's what the objective says, Gregory should actively choose to help Freddy. Maybe he even finds an exit, but chooses to repair Freddy instead of leave, missing his opportunity. We should feel a natural ramp-up of tensions and stakes. Gregory and Freddy find out dark secrets about the Pizzaplex. Maybe the virus that the game talks about is caused by Vanny. Maybe it was installed in all the animatronics, and Freddy just so happened to boot into safe mode, saving him from the virus at the last minute, leading to Freddy now having more importance to the plot. Maybe, following this same train of thought, Vanny then, like I said, puts a hit out on Freddy, asking for all the bots to immobilize him and take him to parts and service for scrapping. Maybe the virus at the Pizzaplex is part of some resurrection plot that brings Burntrap back to life, rather than him just showing up. I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself over and over, but making the story hold values, weight, and logical character arcs, rather than just making random things happen just because, is literally the one sentence that explains everything wrong with Security Breach's plot. As far as what the game's main theme could be, there are so many options. My idea about how the Fazbear Company is profiting off of grief and agony is a really good one, I think, because you can have the obvious side of it, with Fazbear Entertainment reaching new lows, maybe cardboard cutouts of Elizabeth walking towards Baby, just pointing out how insanely odd it is that real-life tragedies can bring joy to so many people besides the victims. And it also works in the lore side. Afton is literally, throughout all the modern series, profiting off of agony. That's the whole deal with Remnant and Agony. A story dealing with the basic idea of people in power will profit off your misery until it becomes their misery can reach incredible highs by tying it into a literal fictional demon who refuses to die and profits off your grief and agony until you make it his. Or say you really hate this really good idea I have and you're objectively wrong. Maybe the game is about identity and losing yourself. Freddy's comments about how I am not me make me feel like an earlier draft of the game's story could have had some revelations involving characters discovering who they are. If the mimic theory is really what's going on, then literally all the three main characters of Security Breach aren't who they say they are. Vanny has her regular security guard demeanor, but is also a serial-killing rabbit lady possessed by Afton's spirit. Burntrap is the resurrected corpse of Springtrap, except he's actually the spirit of a young kid mixed with a robot built to copy. Gregory is a little kid when he's actually a hacker with ties to Afton. Or maybe it's about letting things end. This one is a bit more out there, but if you analyze the fanbase's thoughts at the moment, I think Security Breach dealing with ending things could have been a really effective theme. Afton is brought back, the Fazbear Corporation is back in full swing, old stories of murders and missing children are being resurrected for the sake of corporate greed. Vanny is quite literally the concept of William Afton brought back yet again, set to do pretty much exactly the same kind of things Afton did. Security Breach could have contained the message of all things must end or else they're doomed to repeat forever. Any of these themes could have been good. And I'm not pretending that I'm the only person capable of coming up with some grand theme. Anyone can. I mean, literally, I'd like to try something. Go into the comments and try and come up with your own theme for the game. I guarantee it'd be infinitely more interesting than no theme at all. And before all the hardcore modern lore heads, of which I am one, I will say, come at me with the environmental storytelling, that's no excuse for a plot. Not only is 90% of the environmental storytelling hinting at lore-relevant information we still don't understand, but the environmental storytelling doesn't tell a real story with plot. BioShock is arguably the game that revolutionized the concept of telling a story outside the main plot, rich with details that build a world stronger than you can believe. And guess what? Despite this, BioShock still manages to have a really, really killer plot. The environmental storytelling helps build out characters, helps expand on the villainy of Andrew Ryan prior to us meeting him, but all it ends up doing is strengthening the plot. Environmental storytelling can't help expand or build upon what doesn't exist. Vanny, William, the Pizzaplex, none of these logs or details matter when none of these elements are treated as important to the story. So is that it? Security Breach lacks a strong plot and putting one inside it saves the world? Well, yes and no. Obviously, like I said, there's so much left outside of the plot needs to be inserted. The gameplay was flat out bad, the general feel of the game was lacking, and while nobody will admit it, if they had trimmed it down to a very, very small game with just the highlights of the entire experience, chances are it would have been much better received. That being said, the plot is, in my opinion, the one thing that could have saved it in the eyes of the internet. A fun and interesting story involving Gregory and the insanely popular glam rock Freddy could have led to more people enjoying the game, even if the gameplay wasn't anything to write home about. Now, you may be questioning my line of thinking here. My argument is that Security Breach suffered due to a lack of a strong plot. Meanwhile, the Five Nights at Freddy's series as a whole has never had a strong plot. Ever. How can I claim that plot is the all-important ingredient in cooking up a great story when no previous Fnaf game has followed a structure anywhere near this story structure? And that is the very question I asked myself. Now, I can give you the easy answer of, well, the classic games were tiny and short while Security Breach is 6 to 10 hours, so it's excusable for the classic games, but that feels like a cop-out. No, instead I think I'll, just blow your minds. I realize at this point that Five Nights at Freddy's has always followed story structure. Specifically, it has followed the Save the Cat beat sheet nearly 100%. Allow me to explain. It all comes down to how you interpret these games. As standalone products, sure, they're not following story structure at all, but the second you take them for what they really are, 6 episodes in one large story, the second you realize intentionally or not, Scott Cawthon created an incredible story. Now keep in mind, the story I'm going to lay out to you is specifically the story that most of the fanbase agreed upon once 6 was finished. Something that, through a complex series of events, Scott Cawthon kind of implied is mostly correct. While newer media has retconned some of this story was what was believed to be canon upon the release of Pizzeria Simulator. Opening image. Evan Afton is a boy who's terrified of Freddy Fazbear. His older brother, Michael Afton, is known to play pranks on his brother, teasing him about his fear for the characters. Evan's father is William Afton, one of the company's owners. Evan's birthday is coming up, and Michael throws him inside the mouth of Fredbear, who bites down on Evan's head, leading to his death. Michael is crippled by this. This leads him to fall into a depressive state. Setup. William Afton learns that there might be a way to bring back those who die. He believes he can put his son back together. He builds the Funtime animatronics made for kidnapping children to use in some of his experiments. However, an accident occurs and his daughter Elizabeth, Michael's sister, is killed, possessing Baby. Michael is told to go down there to Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, and he'd find his sister. Michael learns what happened to his sister, what's happened to his father. He realizes that his father is now a murderer, aiming to find the secret to eternal life at the cost of killing children. Theme stated. There isn't any specific theme that is laid out in front of us, though there doesn't need to be. The opening properly sets up the themes of family, grief, letting things end, and the overall theme that would permeate throughout all the games, I'm going to come find you. Catalyst. Michael is scooped by Ennard, killing him, though he comes back to life as a corpse. He's now stuck in an Act 2 world that he can't simply walk out of. Break into Act 2. I'd argue the break into Act 2 is this cutscene in which he vows to find his father. Fun and games. The events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 through 3. Michael travels through the different pizzerias, slowly tracking down his father. As we go through the story, it's revealed to us the truth about the pizzeria over time. B story, or B character. I bet you think there isn't a good B story, but there is! The marionette story is revealed here, during the beginning of Fun and Games, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and they're a character who takes a side role, but ultimately plays into the main story arc. The B story is the story of Charlotte, who was killed by William and gave life to all the other animatronics. Midpoint, a false victory, you say? Surely there isn't any of those, but oh wait, there is. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 seemed to be the end. The spirits were put to rest and the location was burned down. We have finally won. Bad guys close in. Springtrap isn't dead. Yes, bad guys close in the next part are kind of lacking, but there's a lot of different places you could put them. Some might say that bad guys close in is the newspaper revealing Springtrap is alive, some might say it's when Michael is hired to the 6th location, some might even say it's right before the final cutscene where Henry burns it all down. Like I said, you don't have to follow it 100%. Dark Night of the Soul. Michael has lost, his father won't burn, and he's called into the 6th location. Break into Act 3. Michael goes through with Henry's ultimate plan, slowly dragging all the characters who are still alive into one place, leading them exactly where Henry wants them. This is the final battle Mike faces. Finale. Michael survives, revealing the twisted truth about this whole ordeal. Henry traps everyone, burning the location down. The remaining souls are put to rest, Michael finally is able to move on, and William dies once and for all. The B story comes into conclusion as Henry gives one last dedication to his daughter, factoring the B story into the ending, paralleling the same themes of family and putting people back together from the main story. Closing image, the gravestones, indicating the whole story is finally over. Now, I'm not going to try and pretend like it's perfect, but that's the Five Nights at Freddy's story fitting into a logical story structure. I can acknowledge that there's a lot of gray areas, and I don't even think Scott Cawthon did this purposefully, but the story felt satisfying for a reason, and that's it. Characters were actively doing things with their own motives. The puppet was bringing souls back to life. Michael was searching for his father. William was searching for eternal life, supposedly for his son, but who knows who he was doing it for by the end. Stakes felt incredibly high. As time goes on, the implications were worse and worse. By the 6th game, a killer metallic animatronic was in the sewers. William Afton was literally a soulless, unkillable machine, and Michael only had one more chance to pull them all away for good, indicated by how serious Henry is that this plan will work out, even when past plans failed. The story was nice, simple, nothing mind-blowing. Don't get me wrong, if I had the reins of the series and had to direct a full reboot of the entire thing, I would change so much. Because, like I said before, a story is so much more than just following a basic formula. However, by not following it at all, you're doomed for your story to be clunky, hard to follow, and uninteresting. Whether intentional or not, all the lore in Five Nights at Freddy's would end up wrapping around to form a pretty solid plot, with a clear direction. And when you look at it like that, and you realize that the original saga were all chapters in one story, you start to realize where all the other semi-popular mascot horror games go wrong. Bendy and the Ink Machine, Hello Neighbor, Poppy Playtime, they all aim to capture the magic Five Nights at Freddy's had without realizing that central plot, while people will be patient and waiting for it, is necessary to have at the core of your game. Bendy 1 throughout the entire game has about as much explained lore as maybe 2 of the classic Fnaf games, one if you compare it to some of the better ones. In reality, that much should have gone into each chapter, forming a fully fleshed out story throughout the game. Something like Hello Neighbor, or what's the other, Poppy Playtime, come on. Technically, Poppy Playtime's not done, but these games need a beginning, middle, and end. Even if you're going to keep lore elements or secret characters alive, do it like Undertale, where Undertale had a fully fleshed out story. Beginning, middle, end, character arcs, characters who end their stories, while still keeping so much of it alive. Deltarune is one of the most hyped games ever in the indie game community, and it's featuring a character who was so deep in the Undertale lore. But still, Undertale is able to stand on its own. I'm not saying you can't do lore in your games, but so many people fail to understand how to use it. The only perfect example I could come up with, like I said, and I guess it's not the best example, saying that the game isn't finished yet, but Deltarune. In that game, it's got a solid plot. We've been through most points already and are on to the fun and games here in Chapter 2. If you remove all the secret lore stuff from the game, you're still left with an enjoyable, easy to grasp, and easy to get into story. The lore stuff is in there to tease things in the future, to tease a bigger story, etc. Chances are the lore in Deltarune will wrap around to being plot relevant by the end and will become as important as the regular plot is. But that's the thing, even if it didn't for some reason, the plot is what holds the game together. These indie mascot horror games are copying what Five Nights at Freddy's did, but at this point, failing to realize the soul at the heart of any good fictional story. They are, and I don't take this lightly, soulless. So with all that being said, is Five Nights at Freddy's doomed? And unfortunately, this again raises the discussion of lore. As I explained previously, the lore in the first 6 games was hard to put together until the very end, in which it came together and acted as plot points. Technically, despite the overall confusion following Security Breach, I can't say that it's doomed. The direction they're going is not good, but it's certainly not doomed. Let's take a more zoomed out look at the story so far, forgetting Security Breach's failure as a story within itself. What's this new story that Fnaf is building? Opening image, the roller coaster ride in the beginning of Fnaf Help Wanted. We learn that Fazbear Entertainment has successfully rebranded and survived as a company that pokes fun at its history, which the company doesn't realize is all too real. Setup, William Afton, or some form of William, has taken over the Fazbear systems. He was loaded into the VR game and began possessing Vanessa. Catalyst, Vanessa becomes fully possessed by William Afton, who locked her away inside a dark corner of her mind. Debate, Vanny builds herself a Vanny mask, becoming her alter ego fully. Break into Act 2, the Fazbear Mega Pizzaplex opens and Vanny kidnaps children. B's story, Gregory gets trapped in the Pizzaplex. Now, by no means is the story anything to write home about. What it is, though, is proof. Proof that the series can still go somewhere. Similar to the original saga, later bits of lore and information can change our understanding of this story structure. The point is, the structure is loose enough to create an interesting story. We've still got so many plot points that are coming, and we've already got so many plot points that feel like they're going somewhere. Vanessa's possession, the resurrection of Springtrap, who might be the Mimic, the character of Gregory. If they focus the story structure of this new saga and actually try to tell a compelling story about these characters, then maybe, like the original games, they might be able to completely undo any damage people believe Security Breach to have done. But there are so many potential pitfalls. First off, their insistence on bringing up old stuff could easily lead to their downfall. The new books seem to retcon that original Fnaf plot structure I told you about, changing the story from being about Mike chasing his father to other characters. Whether they're canon or not, changing the things that come before will only lead to confusion and more disinterest. The previous story, the original saga, ended. Whether or not characters return, the story is over. Let's tell a new one. Sure, you can use William, you can use Michael even, but the story you tell has to be new and different. Don't retread the same ground. Bringing back William so Michael can fight him one more time would be stupid. Bringing back William so he has a different purpose, and perhaps still is the final villain, can still work, but retreading the same story arc, the same beats, is pointless. Maybe they want to explore the themes of identity and bringing things back, or even just evil, whatever it is. Ruin and Game of the Year contender Help Wanted 2 can absolutely turn this story, shaping it into something that gets people interested again. So that's that. I know how many people take issue with me saying, all you have to do to save the series is follow some book, but as I said before, it's not just one book. These same plot points and beats are in all major story structure formulas, just named different things. And as I said before, you don't have to follow this to a T, nor do you have to replace your secret lore stuff. If you're making a fan game or a game of your own, I advise you to sit down and try filling out the beat sheet. If you find your plot doesn't fit it, perhaps think about what it would look like if it did. Your game about a man who enters a restaurant and ends up being haunted may fall into the shadows of the thousands of similar games, but perhaps taking that character, giving him purpose, giving him character, wants, and needs, and giving the story a main theme will help it stand out among the rest. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be doing a lot more Five Nights at Freddy's videos in the near future, and they'll probably be a little bit more fun, more themed towards theories and solving lore and stuff. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. My name is SpookyDood. I do Deltarune theories, mostly, but I want to expand it to Five Nights at Freddy's and some other general things. I'd like to make my own take on the modern lore, to be honest with you, as I have a number of issues and disagreements with the biggest ones that go around in the community today. Subscribe, leave a like, follow SpookyDood on Twitter, and thanks for watching.